I get a lot of comments about the signs that we have in front of our two churches here in Ravenna and in Cooksaki, those placards that are out by the street. We have volunteers that take charge of that in each parish, and they research really cute, quippy things to put there. Sometimes we hit the mark, other times we may be a little bit off, but we're kind of in a little bit now of a friendly competition with other churches in town. Maybe you've noticed that. A lot of them have signs, and we're kind of rivaling them. And I saw a great one at the First Reformed Church in Cooksaki last week. It said, "God doesn't want weekend visits. God's filing for full custody." That's good. You'll be seeing that maybe next week here. We'll steal that. But it's important to hear the message loud and clear. God is not interested in half measures. We've got to be all in for this to really work. In the gospel, we hear that there are people who want to follow Jesus, but when they say that they do, he warns them, be careful what you wish for. And then he sees how they react to that, and then he goes up to someone else out of the blue who hasn't shown any interest and interrupts their life with an invitation. That's an important message for us to get. If we get a call from God, it's going to interrupt our life. It's probably not going to feel like it was our idea. And it's probably not going to fit in with the plans that we've had. There's a good chance that it's going to blow up the plans and take us in a new direction. It's funny how God works. When I was writing this homily on Tuesday, I was in a public place, as I often am. I like to do that. And I was sitting at a table trying to come up with a good example. I was scratching my head thinking, what's a good example of this? And right in the middle of doing that, a woman walked up to me and said, "Remember me?" I vaguely did. I was having a hard time placing her, though. She was lovely. She was well-dressed. She was wearing jewelry and perfume. And she was vibrant. She had a great big smile. And then I remembered how I knew her. She came to meet with me 2 years ago. And at that time, she was in a dead-end relationship, very unhealthy. She was in a dead-end job. And she was terribly depressed. And when I heard her story and I heard some of the details about her relationship, I said, "You need to leave him. That feels very clear to me. You need to leave him." And she cried, and she had a million reasons why she couldn't. And I prayed for her. And there she was, standing at my table, beautiful, vibrant, wearing jewelry, light in her eyes, and she said, "I left him. It was awful," she said, "but I did it. And now I have a good job, and I've got my own business. I clean houses at night. And every day I wake up, and I thank God for my life." She wanted to answer God's call. That's why she came to meet with me. But the key for her was not wanting to answer God's call. That had a part. The key was she needed to be able to walk away from where she was. That is so often the essential ingredient. In the gospel, we hear that there's lots of people that want to follow him, but that's not the only ingredient you need. Because if there's something you're not willing to walk away from, it might not be possible for you to follow that intention. That woman was dealing with something that I've heard called warm body syndrome. That makes it really hard to leave a bad relationship, doesn't it? Because you've got a warm body there. And what's going to happen if you send them off? You'll be all alone. The self-talk can be terrible. I'll have no one. I'll have nothing. I'll be all alone. But of course, that's a lie in its essence. We're never alone. God is our maker and God is with us. We could never be alone. Many of us studied the laws of physics when we were in high school. And you might remember Newton's first law of motion, that an object at rest tends to stay at rest. And an object in motion tends to stay in motion until another force acts against it. And we're hearing that so often in our lives, Jesus is that force. He is the force that can stop us from the direction we're going, can get us out of that inertia. He is the force that can change where we've been headed. I have some firsthand experience of this, and maybe you're thinking of some firsthand experience you have of this too. But for me, the story that comes to mind is the biggest obstacle I had to becoming a priest. And it was leaving my charming apartment in downtown Albany. If you could see it, you would get it. It was on a cobblestone street. It was one of those garden level apartments with my own courtyard in the backyard. And even though the apartments on the second and third floor were nicer, they didn't have an entrance to the courtyard. It was all mine. And it had a nice little kitchen. It was walkable to everything near downtown Albany, and I loved it. And here is what was required of me if I wanted to be a priest. I needed to leave it, and I needed to move into an old rectory that had been abandoned with 3 other strangers. And when you went in that rectory, everything smelled like old photo albums. If I, however, could not say goodbye to that apartment, and I cried the day I drove that U-Haul, but if I said I can't say goodbye to this, I wouldn't be here right now. An essential part of me following what I was called to do was to say goodbye to something good that was already part of my life. It was the key choice that made this possible. Many of us are recovering from an addiction, and we know that lesson. That's the only way to enter recovery from an addiction. You have to walk away. You have to walk away from old habits. You have to walk away from the substance that you thought you couldn't live without. You have to walk away from the friends that you were actively in that lifestyle with. You have to change your routines. And they always say, you can't go halfway. Halfway won't work. It's got to be a clean break. You've got to be willing to say goodbye in order to say yes to something else. So it seems like this week's work is very clear for us. It's important that we ask ourselves the question, what am I able to say goodbye to if God asks? What might God be asking me to cut out of my life? Might it be alcohol, or shopping, or food, or problematic internet sites? Is there a phone app that we need to delete? Is there a Facebook account that we have to realize has been causing us a lot of trouble, needs to go? Is it like that woman, an abusive relationship? Is it like me, an apartment or a neighborhood? Is it that freedom that we've enjoyed, the ability to play the field, never committing to anything so we can keep all of our options open? Is it some job? What is trying to act on you, like Newton's law of motion says, and change your trajectory, change your direction? What course corrections are needed for the path you're traveling? Our ability to follow God is directly related to our ability to say goodbye. God, you see, is not just interested in weekend visits. God's filing for full custody